America is trying to play empire. The government is lying to you. We need to get back to focusing on ourselves. These agencies became more powerful than the government itself. End all of these wars.
Welcome to the Quest for Clarity podcast. Here is your host, Nolan Denaro.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Quest for Clarity podcast. I'm your host, Nolan Denaro. Thank you so much for being here today. We got a very interesting show for you today. So, just yesterday, as some of you may know, Donald Trump was in a press conference where he was asked to essentially clear the Republican primary field for 2028 right now and potentially endorse J.D. Vance as the heir of the MAGA throne and essentially thrust him into becoming the obvious favorite for the presidential nomination on the Republican side in 2028. He was asked to do this, to which he replied, most likely, that J.D. Vance will be the heir to the MAGA legacy and the Donald Trump legacy in 2028. Here is his exact response.
This weekend, Secretary of State Rubio said that he thought J.D. Vance would be a great nominee. You could clear the entire Republican field right now. Do you agree that the heir apparent to MAGA is J.D. Vance?
Well, I think most likely, in all fairness, he's the vice president. I think Marco is also somebody that maybe would get together with J.D. in some form. I also think we have incredible people, some of the people on the stage right here. So it's too early, obviously, to talk about it, but certainly he's doing a great job, and he would be probably favored at this point.
So clearly from that, we seem to have not just one person who's kind of being thrusted upon us as the heir of MAGA in J.D. Vance, but we also have Marco Rubio, the current Secretary of State, and actually someone who has a very interesting history when it comes to Donald Trump, when it comes to MAGA, and when it comes to being a supporter of the vision that Donald Trump originally laid out for America back in 2016. And there are many reasons for this, but I don't think that these two are suited to be the heir of MAGA, because I don't think that their histories, which I'll get into in this episode, which are very interesting, I don't think those histories are suited to what any of us, if you were asked right now what you want the future of this movement to be, their histories and the truth about where they came from, who backs them, who's funding their campaigns, they are not the vision that Donald Trump thought of in 2016 when he created the Make America Great Again movement. A lot of these backers who supported J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio in their campaigns were the very people that Donald Trump explicitly called out on the debate stage in interviews in 2016. And why don't we just get into this? It's important to be clear on why it's important for this person who's going to run in 2028 to be someone we see as fit for the task. If it's someone this is our chance. This is essentially, imagine post-Reagan, 8 years of Reagan, we have this whole movement. And as Reagan is going off into the sunset, the Reagan era is ending, and we need someone to replace him. We have the Vice President George Bush coming in. We want what we would have wanted to happen at that point would have been for George Bush to continue the legacy of Ronald Reagan in a much better way. Instead, it became completely obvious, and now we know more as time's gone on, that George Bush was very much an insider of the agencies, of the war machine, and he was someone that was not fit to carry the legacy of Ronald Reagan. We can look back on that now and pretty obviously say that. That is a lot of why I fear a J.D. Vance presidential campaign. So, let's get into really the history of where J.D. Vance came from, where Marco Rubio came from, and who is backing them along the way, because I think it's pretty upsetting to learn the truth about this. So let's get into the history, really, of J.D. Vance. Now, J.D. Vance, back in 2015, 16, 17, was a very serious never-Trumper. He called Trump a Nazi, called Trump a racist, and he wrote some very interesting op-eds in the New York Times right around this time. In 2017, he wrote one titled Barack Obama and Me. Now, in that op-ed, he essentially he comes to a conclusion of why Republicans dislike Barack Obama. And he says it's out of envy. And what J.D. Vance described is that the president's example offered something no other public figure could: hope. He said that Barack Obama, he felt a sense of hope from Barack Obama in the way Barack Obama spoke, from the messages he was spreading. And J.D. Vance was very, very praiseworthy of Barack Obama in this New York Times op-ed. And that's very interesting looking back on it. In 2024, J.D. Vance, he was asked if he'd ever praised Barack Obama, and he said no, that wasn't true. And people pulled up this New York Times op-ed and were like, well, you did. You kind of did back in 2017. And then after all these statements of being anti-Trump and never Trump, J.D. Vance transforms a bit. He essentially has a relationship with this man named Peter Thiel. Now, Peter Thiel is this tech bro billionaire from Silicon Valley who owns Palantir, which is an AI firm that's very creepy if you look into it. It's like a facial recognition AI firm that we'll get into it a little bit later, why I think Peter Thiel is largely behind the rise of J.D. Vance. But so Peter Thiel introduces J.D. Vance to Donald Trump in 2021. He brings him to Mar-a-Lago to essentially squash the beef between Trump and Vance because Vance had said some pretty bad things about him. And J.D. Vance around this time as well, he's gearing up for his 2022 race in the Ohio Senate, a race which Peter Thiel financed to the tune of $15 million, which at the time was an all-time record for any Senate campaign donation. So using the $15 million from Peter Thiel, as well as now getting an endorsement from Donald Trump after their Mar-a-Lago meeting, J.D. Vance wins his Ohio Senate race, and Peter Thiel now has one of his boys in the Senate. Now, you also have to look at what Peter Thiel's plan was at the time, because he also funded Blake Masters in 2022 to the tune of roughly $15 million as well. So what was his point here? Why was he spent over $30 million in the 2022 midterm cycle. Why did he do that? Well, the reason he funded people in primary campaigns against Republican incumbents who had voted to impeach Donald Trump after January 6th. That was specifically what he was funding. And he did that to get in close with Donald Trump because he could sense that Donald Trump was getting ready to make a political comeback. And he's on the inside. He's a tech billionaire. He hears the rumors from all the people who are like invested in who's leading this country. And he wanted to get in good with him before that campaign, before the potential second Trump term. He wanted to get his boys on the inside. So Peter Thiel, here's essentially Peter Thiel's history. Peter Thiel is the creator of Palantir, which is an AI company that uses facial recognition as that's like the claim to fame, is their facial recognition software, which is now being used. It's funny enough that Peter Thiel's now got $30 million in subsidies from the government to develop Immigration OS, which is going to be used by ICE to essentially use facial recognition to go after illegal immigrants. I'm all for deporting the illegal immigrants, but I don't want the Patriot Act 2.0 and the expansion of the national security apparatus to be used in the process. I think that's a fair ask. I don't think we need to rely on tech bro billionaires to do this. Anyways, that's what's going on right now. Back to his history. Thiel was very instrumental, along with Don Jr. He was very instrumental in getting J.D. Vance picked as the VP candidate back right before the RNC. So that's Peter Thiel. That is J.D. Vance's life. Since 2011, they've known each other. He met J.D. Vance back when he spoke at Yale in what J.D. Vance has called the most important moment of his life. So that's J.D. Vance and Peter Thiel's history of their rise. Now let's get to Marco Rubio, who I have even more of a dislike for than Peter Thiel. Marco Rubio originally ran for Senate back in 2010, and he was known at the time. He is a neocon of the neocons, okay? Marco Rubio was funded heavily by the Israel lobby. In his Senate race, in his presidential campaign in 2016, he received millions and millions of dollars, specifically from the Adelson family, Sheldon Adelson and Miriam Adelson, who have heavy ties to Israel. So, of course, he also, back in 2012, for those who may be older and remember, he was part of the Gang of Eight, which tried to push past a amnesty bill that would have given amnesty to millions of illegal immigrants back in 2012. Because back in 2012, the autopsy from Mitt Romney's loss was that the Republicans were too harsh on immigration and they needed to go softer. So you have people like Lindsey Graham and Marco Rubio part of the Gang of Eight, that were pushing for mass amnesty. So Marco Rubio's had a lot of shifts this past decade, roughly. So now he is the Secretary of State, and he is now being propped up as a potential VP candidate in 2028. Let's keep looking at Marco Rubio's history. Marco Rubio, back in 2016 when he ran for president, what was his slogan? Anyone out there know? It was A New American Century, a callback to Project for a New American Century, which is, of course, the notorious neocon publication from back in the 90s and 2000s that was basically the old stomping grounds of all the classic neocons who pushed for Middle East war after Middle East war. They also, by the way, predicted 9/11 because they predicted that in order to do any of these wars, they would need a Pearl Harbor-like atrocity to occur on American soil to get the public backing for them. So that's Project for a New American Century, which was used to base Marco Rubio's slogan off of. And Donald Trump himself called out Marco Rubio on the debate stage and in interviews and in tweets for being a shill for his donors. Trump literally said that Marco Rubio is, quote, the perfect little puppet in a 2015 tweet, because this came after a Miriam and Sheldon Adelson meeting that Marco Rubio had. He said he's a puppet to the Adelsons because Adelsons think that they'll do whatever he wants with Rubio, because Rubio's just going to do whatever he wants, take the money, and do whatever the donors say. He was a little puppet, Donald Trump called him. Let's fast forward to 2024. Miriam Adelson gave Donald Trump $100 million, and now Marco Rubio's the Secretary of State, and we're looking the other way and actually greenlighting the annexation of Gaza and the West Bank. So, after 2016, we basically became the thing that we sought to destroy, essentially, is what's going on here. Because just after calling out Rubio for being a shill for the donors, we take the donors' money and look the other way when Israel's doing what they're doing, and now prop Marco Rubio up to what is basically the second most important position in the administration, the Secretary of State. So, I don't like where this is trending at all. I don't like Marco Rubio. And is it really the case? Do we, as MAGA people, do we think it's really the case? Is it the ideal that MAGA is handed off after Trump's gone to two former never-Trumpers, people who are funded to the nines by the AI tech bro billionaires, Silicon Valley, and the Israel lobby, by the neocon war machine? That is what MAGA is after 10 years. We're going to sit here and say that everything we sought to destroy in 2016, from the war machine to the coastal elites, to the people who ran everything, basically, the people who had disdain for middle America, the AI tech bros, the tech billionaires, the people in Silicon Valley, the social media, the people who run the social media apps, the people who get us into Middle East war after Middle East war and have bankrupted our country. Now we're going to crown J.D. Vance and Marco Rubio as the heirs of MAGA, the people who are funded by those exact interest groups that we hated. I mean, if you're going to twist yourself into a pretzel enough to try and justify that, fine, go ahead. But I think I'll be over here in like the sane 2016-17 MAGA camp of what we originally sought to do with this movement. Because if the movement's going to drive itself into the ground by doing that, then what even are we at this point? Are we anything? Do we have principles that we once did back 10 years ago? I thought we had some beliefs that, like Lockheed Martin shouldn't get their way with everything. I thought we wanted to prioritize the people in middle America over the people in like Silicon Valley with their subsidies. I guess I was wrong. I mean, I don't know. Because if we're going to be propping up I'm not voting for Marco Rubio in any position of power. Are you kidding? And I'm not trying to have Peter Thiel be in charge of, like the security apparatus of the United States. That would be Patriot Act on steroids if we had Palantir and Immigration OS running wild, unregulated. I mean, it seems like every day we're getting executive order after executive order of no regulation on AI for 10 years, more subsidies to the AI companies. What happened to America First? What happened to Make America Great Again? What happened to the original message of this? I really don't understand where we're going with this, because if the end goal, if what Donald Trump brought us to And if his legacy is Marco Rubio, J.D. Vance, Peter Thiel, who 10 years ago hated his guts and were writing op-eds against him, then I don't know what we ever were. Because what is that? That's not what I'm voting for. I thought we were told specifically to vote against that type of elitist autocracy, technocracy. That's exactly what we voted against. The security apparatus, the endless wars, the lobbyists who funded all these the people that Donald Trump himself called out on the debate stage as the liars who were only saying things because their donors and lobbyists told them to say things. He called out Marco Rubio when the donors in the audience of the Republican debates booed. Marco Rubio was who he called out and said, those are all the donors and special interests over there. Those are the Marco Rubios, the Jeb Bushes, the Ted Cruzes. These are the people that we called out, and now these are the ones that we're propping up as real MAGA? No, that's not who it is. These aren't the people who actually believed in Donald Trump at the beginning. The people who believed in Donald Trump at the beginning, the Steve Bannons, those people are not. Those people didn't have the Peter Thiel's best interests in mind. So, I don't know what this is turning into. This isn't what I voted for. I'm not voting for. I don't want MAGA to become the party of the coastal elites and the party of the AI bros who have the most bizarre things that they think about. Go watch Peter Thiel's interview from like a month ago with the New York Times. He was asked point blank if he wanted the human race to succeed, and he struggled to come up with an answer.
I think you would prefer the human race to endure, right? You're hesitating.
Yeah, well,
yes?
I don't know. I would.
This is a long hesitation. This is a long hesitation.
There's so many questions implicit in
Should
this.
the human race survive?
Yes.
Okay.
But I also would I also would like us to radically solve these problems.
Right.
And so it's always, I don't know, transhumanism is this. The ideal was this radical transformation where your human natural body gets transformed into an immortal body.
You're deeply invested in Palantir, in military technology, in technologies of surveillance, in technologies of warfare, and so on, right? And it just seems to me that when you tell me a story about the Antichrist coming to power and using the fear of technological change to sort of impose order on the world, I feel like that Antichrist would maybe be using the tools that you were building, right? Like, wouldn't the Antichrist be like, great, we're not going to have any more technological progress, but I really like what Palantir has done so far, right?
Yeah,
isn't that a concern? Wouldn't that be the irony of history would be that the man publicly worrying about the Antichrist accidentally hastens his or her arrival?
There are all these different scenarios. I obviously don't think that that's what I'm doing. To be clear, I don't think that's what you're doing either. I'm just interested in how you get to a world willing to submit to permanent authoritarian rule.
This is the guy that backed J.D. Vance in his Senate race and has been basically lifelong friends with him. And these guys are talking about like the end of times, like about how human beings should surpass nature through the use of AI. These aren't people that have anything in common with anyone who voted for MAGA. Like, what do you have in common? The average American out there who voted for Donald Trump because they want lower taxes and they want to reduce inflation. What do you have in common with Peter Thiel, who's out here talking about like the creepiest, weirdest things with no expression on his face whatsoever, and talking about the end of times and how AI will basically become humanity? Do you have anything in common with that? Go ahead, try and convince me that you do. Because that's ridiculous. You don't. And the original message of Make America Great Again has nothing to do with that. And for some reason, that's the direction we're headed down. So, and you have these people who just will call it out, who won't call it a thing. Marco Rubio's a warrior. That was a Charlie Kirk tweet that I saw a couple months ago. Marco Rubio's a warrior. He's the man. Really? Would you have said that 10 years ago when he was saying the things he was saying then about Donald Trump? how quickly we forget. I don't know. I feel like some of the statements that were said by both of these guys should be enough to be like, I don't want to really be associated with you. I mean, Marco Rubio is the neocon of the neocons, the very person that Donald Trump was completely against in 2016. I mean, now I'm repeating myself at this point, but what can you say about this? What can you say? So, not happy with that. I don't think I want these guys to be the heirs of MAGA, mostly because their entire lifetime and their entire history goes against MAGA. So, there you go. And they have nothing in common with you. Don't get it twisted. They have nothing in common with you. They don't share any of your interests, because their interests are who their donors are. And Rubio's donors don't even care about America. They care about Israel. And J.D. Vance's donor of Peter Thiel just cares about expanding his AI facial recognition apparatus and getting the best government policies possible to do so. So just keep that in mind when we go towards 2028. Is that really what we want the message of MAGA and the legacy of Donald Trump to be? Because I don't. So that's where I'm going to end it off today. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Be sure to follow me on Instagram, X, and Spotify. And be sure to like and subscribe here on YouTube. And yeah, be sure to keep updated on all the latest news right here on the show. Thank you so much. Have a good day.